What's up, everybody? Today I have a Blacephalon Pidgeotto deck list to share with you today. Let's just jump right into it. Starting off, we have 4 of our main attacker, Blacephalon. Blacephalon is a really good card. For 3 fire energy, you get to use Fireball Circus to discard as many fire energy as you want from your hand, and it's just 50 damage times the amount of energy you discarded this way. This is really good because you can knock out big tag team Pokemon in one hit while you're still only giving up 1 prize card. Our main engine in the deck is using Pidgeotto with Airmail. It's really good because of its ability. You aren't really going to be attacking with it as it has very low HP and not a very good attack. But its ability allows you to look at the top 2 and put 1 into your hand, putting the other on the bottom of your deck. This is your main engine in the deck, and setting it up is very important. Then we have 4 copies of Pidgey to evolve from Pidgeotto as the basic Pokemon. We're using the 60 HP one, so it's much harder for Mewtwo and Mewdex to get a KO with Espeon and Deoxys early on in the game. Next we have 3 Jirachi. Jirachi is a great starting Pokemon with its ability Stellar Wish. You get to look at the top 5 and put a trainer card you find there into your hand and shuffle the rest into your deck, although Jirachi becomes asleep. But we have a solution for that, a skateboard. Jirachi is also a great Pokemon in the mid-game as it can help you thin your deck and search for important supporter cards. Next, in our last Pokemon, we have 1 Victini Prism Star with Infinity. It's really good because for only 2 fire energy, you can do up to 240 damage and shuffle every energy from your discard pile into your deck. It's incredibly powerful, can deal lots of damage, and can help you out in the late game if you've run out of Fire Crystal. That's it for our Pokemon. Now on to our supporter cards. We have 4 copies of Welder. This is the main supporter card in the deck. We have attached 2 fire energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon, and if you do, you get to draw 3 cards. It's incredibly good because now, instead of taking 3 turns to charge up your Blacephalon, it only takes 1. And that's incredibly good. Additionally, it's also a draw engine if you need that. Next, we have 4 copies of Professor Elm's Lecture. Professor Elm's Lecture is really good. Lets you search your deck for 3 Pokemon with 60 HP or less. In this deck, that's only Pidgeotto and Pidgey, but it's still very good to help you set up your main engine in the deck, which, as mentioned earlier, is Pidgeotto. Those are only supporter cards. Next, you have 4 copies of Pokegear. You look at the top 7 cards of your deck and pick a supporter card you find there. And then you get to keep it. Really good for getting your turn 1 Professor Elm's Lecture or Welder later in the game. Next, we have 4 copies of Fire Crystal. And that is, put 3 fire energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. It's incredibly good as you're going to be using Fireball Circus a lot. And with all that energy hitting the discard pile, it's going to be really difficult to keep it coming if you don't have fire crystals. Next, we have 3 copies of Fiery Flint. You get to discard 2 cards from your hand, and then search your deck for 4 fire energy cards, and put them into your hand. It's really good because in early, middle, or late game, you get to search your deck for energy cards and put them into your hand, which is always great, as Fireball Circus relies on having a lot of energy. We have 2 copies of Great Catcher. Great Catcher is really good because you get to bring up a big tag team Pokemon or even just a GX by discarding 2 cards from your hand, and then you can either knock it out with Fireball Circus or just leave it in the active spot, depending on how your game is going. Next, we have 2 copies of Lily's Pokédoll. You play it as a 30 HP basic colorless Pokemon, but although it can't retreat or attack, your opponent doesn't take any prize cards when they knock it out. It's really great for just having it sit as your active Pokemon while you set up your board looking for Welder or Pidgeotto. finishing up the items, we have 2 escape board for our Jirachi, and we attach it, and it has 1 less retreat cost and can retreat when it's asleep. Very helpful because it puts itself asleep with its spectacular ability. Our last item card is a Pal Pad, mainly used for shuffling Welder back into your deck when you've used it up. I strongly believe that Pal Pad is a necessity in the deck, although some lists have cut it. I cut a single copy of Lily's Polka Doll for it because you need to recycle your welder sometimes, and you can be a little less careful with playing your welder out sparingly in the beginning of the game. It's also especially good against one-prize decks because you can stream attacks easier. Onto stadium cards, we have 3 copies of Ultra Space, and you get to search your deck for an Ultra Beast. This is our main way to search for Blacephalon aside from Pidgeotto. It's a great stadium card, so it can counter other bothersome stadiums, and also search out your main attacker. We have 1 Heat Factory Prism Star, which is really great in any situation. You get to discard a fire energy from your hand that you found using just drawing it, Fire Crystal, Fiery Flint, anything like that. And you get to draw 3 cards, which is really good in it, as you can also use Airmail and Welder to draw cards, so you can draw plenty of cards and always have what you need. Lastly, we have 14 Fire Energy cards. You may be wondering why we don't play Beast Energy in this deck, and it's because you can't discard it with Fireball Circus, and that's our main attack. You can just discard 1 additional Fire Energy from your hand, and you're doing more than that amount of damage. Let's talk a little bit about the matchups. We are going into a meta after Daytona Beach Regional, and we're preparing for the San Diego Regional Championships coming up on the 7th and 8th of December. This is going to be the list that I intend to play this weekend. So, matchups. Let's see. Let's start with Gardevoir and Sylveon. That won the most recent regional championships in Daytona Beach. The biggest thing about this matchup is that they're a tag team deck, and you can simply use Fireball Circus 2 times to KO it. If they're playing Amistar, you have to be a little bit more careful and potentially only use 2 Pidgeotos instead of the 3 you would normally want. Aside from that, it's a really, really good matchup as they're a tag team deck and don't have many options for knocking out your Blacephalons. Additionally, when they use their GX attack to get rid of your hand, you can use cards like Pidgeotto to draw right out of it. Another deck that's been doing well recently is the Ability Reshiram and Charizard. You generally have a pretty good matchup, although it can sometimes be close depending on how you draw. Blacephalon GX is a deck that you normally have a pretty good matchup against, as it's hard for them to find an attacker that can knock out your Blacephalon without lost zoning their own energies, like Heatran GX, but generally they'll only run 1 or 2 copies of it, and if you can knock it out early on, then it's a pretty good victory for you. Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia can be a little bit tricky because if they get their GX attack off, they get to take an extra prize card whenever they knock out one of your Blacephalons or other Pokemon. You need to be really careful not to give up prize cards like Jirachi or Pidgeotto, and make sure you're always taking a 1-hit knockout. If you can do this, you'll be doing really good. Additionally, for that matchup, you need to be careful about their Phione, because if you have Lily's Polka Doll in your active, they can force you to bring up a Pokemon that you don't want to bring up, and then they get to take 2 prize cards immediately off of it. With Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia, it's all about speed when you're playing against them. So just be careful with that matchup, and you should have a pretty good game. Against Malamar, you do have a pretty tough matchup, but your only hope is to go really fast and try and take knockouts before they do, so you can just be aggressive. Hopefully take 2 or 3 prize cards before they even get there first. That's really the only way you can win Malamar. Against Pidgeotto control, you're going to want to make sure you have Pidgeotto set up and capitalize on using Victini Prism Star a couple of times to retrieve your energy and draw out of any hand lock they put you into. It could be a little bit awkward to discard all that energy to knock out and attack a stall deck, but you should have a pretty good matchup if you use your Pal Pad, Welders, Airmails, and Energy carefully. Against Florges Stall, it is actually a pretty close matchup, as you have to be careful on what Pokemon to knock out. You have to be careful not to discard too many energies, otherwise it could be a problem for you. You can use Blacephalon to take knockouts, Jirachi to set up, although you don't have a way to bring up their benched Pokemon. There isn't really too much of a way to win this matchup. You just have to hope that they draw poorly or draw moderately and not too well, so that you can come in and win the game with your Blacephalons. Against some other rogue tag team decks, you should be able to follow the same game plan you might against Ability Reshiram and Charizard, or Gardevoir and Sylveon. Against other one-prize decks, you could have a tough time, but you just have to improvise and try and follow the same strategy you might against Malamar. Overall, I think this deck is super strong. It's my top pick. I'm probably going to bring it. I really hope that you all consider this deck one of the best decks that you can play, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.